Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Marion O'Connor.
Oh, I'm here, brother. How are you? Like again, I'm traveling all over the country. I found a hotel like 20 minutes from where I'm working in Nashua, New Hampshire. So I'm just like, all right, well, I'm expecting to see bears and stuff, like it's going to be pretty rugged and rough. Like, did you know that Nashua is officially like a city? Like, there's people that live there and they
Yep.
have roads. That,
Yeah,
bro,
I was aware of that. They got
I,
roads up there.
I saw a freaking fire truck. Okay. I'm like,
Wow.
how in
In
the
New Hampshire?
world in New Hampshire, I saw a fire truck. Yeah. Yeah. No black bears, though I was looking. You know what I mean? Like I expected the place to be overrun with black bears.
What are the free stayers even doing anymore, man? That's
Honestly. I mean, for the show, I if we talk about it, like I candlepin bowling, candlestick bowling. I mean, their bowling stuff is crazy, literally crazy. It's like a round stick about 2 inches around, and you have this tiny little skee ball, like when you go to those arcade games, and you whale that down the lane, and you try to knock over these tiny little sticks, these tiny little sticks. You get splits all of like every time if you get the ball to stay in the lane. Uh, I did try launching the ball about 2/3 of the way down. That seemed to be pretty successful. It didn't make a loud noise, so they didn't yell at me. Like sometimes when I was a kid and I'd launch those big 12-pound bowling balls 20 feet down the lane, you'd be like, bam, and then like the lady would come over and be like, what are you doing? So I could launch those suckers right down the lane, bounce them once or twice, and get a split. I mean, it was awesome.
I don't know. It sounds fun though. I've never done candlestick bowling.
It was a blast,
cool.
man. So, as most of the viewers of the show know, I have a very funny story that I want to just let everyone know, because if they ever meet my kid, he's going to tell them. But I went outside, smoked a cigarette, took my bowling shoes off, put my Crocs on, came back in. My kid had figured out some of the rules, so he starts yelling them at me, and I'm getting excited. So I get up there and I go to bowl, and I'm like getting ready to do my little slide thing, and I had my Crocs on, and I went flying head over heels, right? Like about, I mean, I must have been a quarter of the way down the lane. It was really embarrassing. It was the kind of thing you hope no one sees, right? But then, like, the guy bowling in 2 lanes over was like, are you okay? And I'm like, I was really hoping you didn't see that. And my kid is 18-year-old kid just giggling, right?
Yeah.
So,
of course.
Yeah, so I honestly had no choice but to beat him in that game. Like he had crushed me.
The only way you can save your dignity.
Yeah, it was the only way to save it.
Up.
Oh my god!
Did you win then?
I did, and then we did the rubber match, and I beat him in that too. Like I literally crushed him in that, and he was so mad by then. Like he's a little bit like me, like very competitive over stupid little trivial things. So it was epic, a victory for the old man, and I mean, it was the weirdest thing that I saw about New Hampshire, other than everything is literally cheaper there, like everything, because they don't have the outrageous taxes that we pay on things. Gas is $3.10 a gallon there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like $3.30 around my area, but
yeah, you get out to where I'm at, it's like $3.70, and it's like,
dang,
yeah, it's rough. It's rough. It's no fun. But Nashua, New Hampshire, it's like a real city, guys, and like relatively bear free as near as I could tell.
Yeah.
Plus, it was the only hotel I found with a hot free breakfast in the entire time I've been going up to Lowell, where every hotel I stayed in was like, you could pay $18 for breakfast or GTFO and go find your own. Like, I'm like,
that's ridiculous.
Yeah, what in the heck is going on? What happened to my free breakfast?
No, it's not even worth it. Well, all right, so we should probably get this show. So we're gonna talk about what we're gonna talk about the debate. I think that the title of this is "Old Guys Talk About Golf."
Oh yeah.
Technocrats meltdown over SCOTUS. So we're gonna talk about all the bureaucrats and the technocrats getting mad.
Oh yeah.
And then it's a Happy Treason Day. So
all right,
4th of July week. So
we'll be making fun of those smarmy Brits.
That's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
So we're gonna head in show in 5 seconds, and if anything, say leave a comment.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
Welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Marion O'Connor.
I'm here, brother. How you doing?
Oh, living the dream, Tim. Living the dream.
Me too, dude. I had this nightmare event this week. I dreamt that I laid on my couch and watched two old dudes wrestle it out about the future of the United States. And what I found myself wishing, Kevin, was that we could find someone with more experience and maybe a little bit more maturity than those two, perhaps a few more years on them, because, dude,
hey,
it was
Jimmy Carter is still eligible. He only had one term.
Honestly, I'd almost take him at this point. Like it's bad, man. It's bad. And I hate Jimmy Carter. I've mentioned that on the show. Like I think he did a lot of things that were in the vein of good intentions create bad policy and absolutely kind of destroy society. Jimmy Carter was one of the greatest presidents of all time.
Oh yeah, no, he has a few of those.
Yeah. So
we're going to talk about the presidential debate. We're also going to get to some of the Supreme Court decisions. Then we're just going to talk about, 4th of July, Independence Day, why we're glad we're an independent country, stuff like that.
Yeah, so why not?
So all right, I'll be honest with the presidential debate, I didn't watch most of it because it sounded like a bad time, and my wife didn't want to watch it, and I can't blame her for that. She's just like, no, that's not how I'm using my Thursday night.
My wife is a bit on the apolitical side, a bit uninterested or disinterested in politics, and she started checking out some of the the clips that they were going around TikTok and on TV and stuff like that. And she's like, are they pranking us? Like, is this some kind of joke? And I'm like, yeah. Babe, I watched the whole thing. And I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy. Yeah. Hey, Sean. Yeah. It was
debate. He says,
yeah,
Sean on
absolute
X.
Debate in air quotes. It was, first of all, it wasn't a debate. Like it was a statement of platitudes and questions about platitudes. So like, let's say they asked about Social Security and both guys get to go, oh, we'll fix Social Security. You're so much better than the other guy that we don't even know what we're going to do. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
like it was weird. I tried to, Kevin, it was one weird event that I had. I went to Google to try to get a list of the questions because I just thought somebody would have printed them out and we could talk about their answers in relation to the specific questions. But I'm stuck with not being able to find those questions and talking about my general impressions of the debate. So that's weird.
I mean, well, I remember a few of the questions, mostly because I watched about 2/3 of it, like literally right before the show.
Nice.
Very fresh in my memory. But something I said, I think it was either last week or the week before, was like the winner of this debate isn't going to be who answers the questions in a way that Americans are going to agree with, where they're going to have the same policy views, where they're going to, respect like the answer to big problems. It's going to be basically vibes. It's going to be who sounds like better and more confident in the debate. And I think that's kind of how this ended up being, is because it's like, because I've told you, like, because I've talked about this in relation to like Dave Smith and Donald Trump too. Like, some people sound like better debaters just because of their confidence and their cadence, right?
Absolutely.
So, like,
yeah,
and that was Donald Trump this time. Like, it didn't matter what he was saying. He was saying like, weird, unrelated stuff half the time, but like he sounded confident about it. Whereas Joe Biden is like, oh, come on, man, we're gonna stop the COVID and that's how we stop Medicaid.
Yeah, we stopped Medicaid, and it's like, dude, first of all, that came out of left field. He was less responsive to the questions than Trump, but the questions were designed just to, as a test of mental acuity. And look, I gotta go with this. I had this hilarious experience. I kind of tweeted about it on Twitter, but it was this wild Trump going into this long dissertation about all the cognitive tests he took and how the doctors think he's one of the most cognitive people in the world and how he aced those tests. And I'm giggling because it was absurd the way he was answering it. It was just horribly structured and it was making me laugh. And I'm just like, and then my laugh it kind of tailed off, Kevin. I want to be honest, because I'm like, hold on. Like, this guy's presenting himself as arguably more competent than the other guy, but like, his answer is a rambling bunch of mishmash, which devolved into an argument about golf, which I was like, I'm ready. I drive for show. I putt for dough. I am a good golf player. Like, I have an 11 handicap, but I'll guarantee I could beat both those guys. I guarantee it. Like, I could wreck
You think
them.
you could beat Trump? I don't know that you could beat Trump at golf. Trump, he actually golfs like all the time. Like he might actually be good. Like I don't think
golf's all about it's just all about. Well, it is.
I mean, I definitely could not beat Trump at golf because, like, to me, it's like if I lose less than 10 balls and drink more than 5 beers, like I've won at golf. Like that is my bar for like, was golfing successful? Yes. I don't know what my score is. Don't ask me what I shoot. I don't know.
Right. Well, those are fair metrics to judge your golf game by. But I did play in leagues for several years, so I did establish a handicap. I hit a killer drive for like a round old dude. Like, I can still bomb that sucker. Like it will go forever. Now, I'm sure younger guys, like, I'm not going to make the old guys PGA Tour or anything like that. But to watch a presidential debate devolve into arguments over handicaps,
yeah, it's ridiculous. Like even the stuff in the middle, right? It's just like the part I watched like a few minutes of live was like when they're talking about veterans and like literally they're just calling each other stupid. Like it's like I think Joe Biden like literally called Trump like like a loser or something at some point in time too. And it's like, okay, no, you're the worst of it. Donald Trump's like, I'm the best president ever, and all the veterans love me, and I took the best care of them. And then Joe Biden's like, no, I did. Here's something I did, and he mumbles something that no one can like understand.
Unintelligible. Like, it literally was that right there.
And then he like basically insulted Trump, and I was like, man, what is happening here? I'm gonna go back to like drinking my beer and watching Masterpiece Theater because that's better than this.
Look, I hung in there. I hung in there for the people of this show. I hung in there for you. I hung in there for my kid because I want you guys to get my impression of the debate. And honestly, it's not that important because I was completely unimpressed. And again, like, I'm going to point to that whole rambling dissertation about his cognitive tests and Joe Biden's failure to finish a coherent sentence. Like, it was epic. It was a perfect example of the two-party system. It was like Beavis and Butthead on a stage. It was all of those things that we, as members of a principled third party looking for solutions to these problems of inflation, taxation, overregulation, small businesses being crushed, looking for answers. There were no answers to violence in the world, answers to all of these things. These guys don't have them. Okay. Their parties aren't even asking them to come up with them. They're just asking them, like you pointed out, to look sharp on a debate stage. That's where we're going. And it's wild, man. It's wild. I love it though. It was hilarious.
No, I mean, like there are parts that are funny, like legitimately, like again, Trump is funny sometimes, but like, it's funny, but it's not really that funny,
Well, in the context of him sticking it to the man and putting his angry finger in the face of mainstream media, I think almost everyone can enjoy that. Anti-authoritarians, anti-establishment people, centrists can all get a chuckle out of that. Still end up hating him, still end up not thinking he's the right guy to vote for. But they can appreciate him making fun of the mainstream media. And honestly, what he did do really well was maintain his composure, didn't go overboard with making faces at Joe Biden. He had the best zinger of the night. I don't know if you caught that. That was actually, he was like, he said something along the lines of, I don't know what you just said, and to be frank, I don't think you know what you just
Yeah.
said. And it was like, and it was a perfect time for that line, and you could tell he probably had it queued up and practiced it because he knew he was going to get an
Yeah.
opportunity to use it, and his timing was absolutely perfect. It was
No,
really well
it was
done.
great. Like he had some, he was sharp. And again, it probably helped him that his mic was muted, so he couldn't like, interrupt Joe Biden and look like a jerk.
It wasn't. That was actually, I would say that was probably the biggest advantage that he had. That he played that well. He didn't try to yell, and he accepted the debate rules and used them to his advantage. One of the rules that I think people may not have caught was that they can ask a question, and the candidate was not obligated to answer that question. They could talk about whatever they wanted as a
Yeah.
response to that question. That's why those two guys got off on tangents. That's why
He could
if
just-
there was an important question asked, they didn't have to answer it. They could just go back to a different subject or
Which is, like I get it, like because what would Donald Trump do? He'd pivot back to immigration where he feels like he's strongest, right?
Sure.
And he would just jack up the fear mongering and be like, yeah, no, we're talking about immigrants and they're coming in, they're committing all the crimes and they're raping people, and like you just pivot like, sir, the question was about veterans.
Right, but I want to answer,
But he wanted to answer the
opponent-
question, want to answer, which again, like if you've ever gotten like any like media training, that's what they tell you to do. Like you talk about what you want to talk about. Like that's, you have a limited space to deliver like the answer and the messages that you need to get. And Joe Biden could have done the same thing, but he didn't. Like he just wasn't sharp enough to do it. And so, to that point, like a bunch of people are saying stuff like what Patricia's saying on YouTube, saying Joe's handlers need jail time for elder abuse. They're like, I don't know, he didn't look super well.
He didn't. There's some concerns about was it FDR who basically like Eleanor Roosevelt was basically running the country and answering all of his questions. There's
Woodrow Wilson, and
Okay.
he was very, very sick for like a good chunk of the end of his presidency. They thought he had a stroke. I mean, FDR wasn't well either.
Yeah.
But the spouse kind of running the country, that was Woodrow Wilson.
Well, they're looking at Jill Biden, like she perhaps is the man behind the scenes, the person wearing the pants in this thing. And arguably, after watching that debate, you hope somebody competent is there. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but I mean, like Jill Biden is like, his biggest cheerleader, and like saying like, you did a good job, Joe, and like in that weird thing afterwards, and
you answered all the questions. Let me hug you. Like,
I was like,
here's your cookie. It was, look, all of the optics were bad for Joe Biden. Like, I cannot think of one thing. Like walking out on the stage, Kevin, even there, I was like, oh, this doesn't look good. And then 26 seconds into his opening monologue, I'm like, all right, he's retiring.
No, he sounded like and then they put out like halfway through the debate, like, oh, he has a cold, guys. I'm like, no, he sounded terrible. And I know some people like said, who is his body double the next day? Legacy Zach on YouTube said that. Like, because like the next day he gave like a relatively normal speech. Now again, I don't think it was all that exciting. Like a bunch of Democrats I know were like, oh my goodness, look at Joe, he's all fired up. I'm like, okay, this is like it's like a normal campaign speech, guys. Calm down.
I guess his normal working hours are apparently from 10 to 4, which he apparently has all sorts of energy from 10 to 4. I guess that's probably when his morning meds kick in, and that like coffee and the Adderall and the stuff that they might give him at night, it's a little harder to gauge.
Like whatever drugs they need to give the president to be able to like operate sharp, like as much as possible. My goodness, just give him the drugs. But like
it's just I'm concerned that over time the effectiveness of certain treatments seems to wear off for everyone.
Right. Like whatever it is, and there's like some people who are like in all seriousness in cognitive decline, like sometimes towards the end of the day when they're tired, like that's when like these types of moments start to happen. It's not like constant, it's just like, oh, there's these weird moments like towards the end of the day. Whereas like they seem off, they're repeating stories, they're forgetting what they're talking about, like that type of stuff. But in a president of the United States, and again, he's over 80 years old. He's 82 years old.
Yeah,
like it's just gonna keep happening more frequently, and like it's just a fact of life. It's not to even be mean to Joe Biden, and I can certainly be mean about his policies, but like, dude, he might not be physically capable of like doing the job.
So that, I mean, just to put it out there, what would be your conjecture as to if they decide to retire him? Are they going to run Kamala? How do they avoid
It's
running
probably gonna
Kamala?
be it's gonna be Kamala.
Yeah, but how do they? Yeah, they can't just skip her, right? Like that would be
No,
impossible.
no, because like I mean, if he like resigns, then yeah, that's the replacement. I mean, there's probably some mechanisms to like have him stay as president, but decide he's not running for president anymore, and then release his delegates. But like he probably wouldn't do that. Just because they don't want chaos at the Chicago convention, because we're really trying not to repeat 1968 here. But if
All
anyone
right.
remembers that, but is it 68?
No one,
Yeah,
I don't remember it. What are we
yeah,
talking
68.
about?
The Chicago convention where there are all the riots.
Oh, okay. All right. I got
Yeah.
you. I got you.
And like Zach said, sundying is a very real thing for those with dementia. My mom was CNA who worked with people with Alzheimer's after 5 they're shot. Like, yeah, like it's like a thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's probably gonna be it would probably be Harris who would take the place of the ticket, which we'll get fun memes out of that, at least, because she says weird stuff all the time and laughs in a strange way and gives us plenty of word salads.
We are going to get a steady diet of word salad if she ends up campaigning for president. It's going to be
ready for your roughage, America.
It's going to be epic, Kevin. Like she is, I don't know. She's one of my least favorite people in the political sphere, and that's hard for that because I hate them all. But she's down there towards the lower end of the list of all of them that I hate.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Does that feel fair? I also want to say that I'm sympathetic to old dudes losing their train of thought late in the day. But here I am doing a podcast, guys. Like I'm hanging in there. Honestly, I want to once again put it out there that I am not the libertarian that is going to be appointed to Trump's cabinet when he eviscerates Kamala Harris and Joe Biden throughout the fall. But I mean,
no,
I take
it's going to be rough.
Be
like I doubt Kamala Harris in polls is like not beating Trump. In fact, they did a bunch. Like they had like Gavin Newsom and Gretchen Whitmer and Pete Buttigieg, who is the only one who like was beating Trump in any polls, funnily enough.
Look, Trump it's weird because the polls were wrong about Trump being behind in 2016. I don't know that the polls are right about Trump being ahead in 2024. I think that statistical analysis is one more thing that has been bastardized in our society. So there's a lot of statistical analysis built on faulty presumptions.
Check out Nate Silver's blog on it because he gives Trump a 66% chance of winning. We'll just say that there's still a very good chance that Biden wins, but like there's a slight advantage to Trump. But he actually breaks down. He's like, it's not about national polls. He does talk about those and how they fit into the context of like the Electoral College and how like national polls tend to, indicate in certain states how like people in those states tend to vote, but it's not a sure thing. And then there's the actual polls from those states. So he weights those in different ways. And then basically just talks about like the states that Biden needs to win, some of those swing states that he won last time, like Georgia and Wisconsin and Michigan and Arizona. Like it's not looking great for him. So that's
it's an interesting time, like we've railed against this two-party system that gives us duopolistic candidates like Trump and Biden. And our friend Patricia says, does a third party have a chance? Does literally anybody else have a shot? Now, certainly, if I was a Democrat and I wanted authoritarian restrictions on guns and Joe Biden scared me, I would be looking at Mr. Kennedy. I absolutely would.
Like my comment time in there? Jamie says that therealdebate.com with Mr. Kennedy was better to watch. Yeah, so Robert F. Kennedy did another debate, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It wasn't a debate. It was just like kind of him responding to the questions. Mm-hmm. I think it like wasn't John Stossel involved too. Like, I don't know, it would have been nice if like Chase Oliver, the libertarian candidate, were involved in that too. Since it looks like they'll probably be like both on just enough to like technically win the Electoral College, which to me means they should be invited to like a CNN debate. Like That's still my position, is that if you have enough votes to win the Electoral College, you should be on the debate stage. That full stop. That should be what it is. Because I think people would have appreciated both RFK and Chase Oliver in that debate, because they would have looked like the only two normal guys on that stage.
I would appreciate that. And again, it's not just because I'm a libertarian. I think that we need to have choices. I think we need to have big, huge presidential debates. And sure, towards the end, we can narrow it down to what the polls are saying at that point are the two favorites. But to be able to compare and contrast Kennedy, Oliver, Trump, and Biden in one event, they're just going to be answering questions with platitudes anyways. And they do it for 2 hours. I know that it would have a positive impact on anti-establishment and libertarian candidates. I know
I would say, like, both RFK and Chase Oliver both do give specific policy answers, right? Like they have actual positions that they speak to. Like, I don't agree with RFK's answers, but like he can speak with some specificity at times.
Correct.
And probably string together sentences, unlike me. But anywho, we should head to break. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon.
All right. Hey, guys, don't forget to smash the like button, the laugh button, the emoticons. Try to stay away from angry responses. Respond to each other in the chats. YouTube, especially, guys, if you could give us a few more likes, I think that algorithm is looking to popularize people, so I would really appreciate it. But yeah, and we're getting some comments from Twitter. Brian Borheim's out there. Sean O'Malley's out there. That's kind of a nice night going on here. We've got some interesting stuff coming at us from all over the interweb. So I'm very happy.
Yeah. And listen, Kevin, Legacy Zach and Music, Kevin's Culture dropping that Masterpiece Theater. LOL.
I was gonna,
listen,
la-di-da-ya there.
No, my wife likes the Pride and Prejudice, like Masterpiece Theater version, and I've seen it like now 50 times, and that's what she wanted. I was like, okay, so I guess that's what I'm watching. I'm not putting on the debate. She's like, that sounds terrible. And she's not even politically disengaged. She's just like, no, I'm just going to catch the summary tomorrow.
Now,
Sounds painful.
Let me ask you a question. And if this is too personal, it's fine. But your wife, where does she lean on the political scale? Is she goes kind of Democrat? She goes kind of Republican? She's
like, Democrat. Like she used to work for like an activist organization, actually.
Right.
Like she's
cool.
She's pretty Democrat. Moderated a bit, but
my wife leans pretty hard towards like liking Donald Trump and the concept that certain conservative values would benefit society. She thinks I'm a little bit of a lunatic and a little bit too hard on him. And she's probably, in my circle of friends, I'm definitely the guy that is criticizing Trump and making fun of my friends and challenging their presuppositions that he's any kind of conservative, that he's any kind of like anti-authoritarian, that he does what he says he does, and that his fiscal policies is somehow better than Biden's. So, but I do have to concede certain things, that he was way better about drill baby drill and using what resources we have to our effective benefit, and deregulating. Again, I can't stress this enough. One of my favorite policies that he pulled off was importing drugs from Canada and other markets. He made that way more legal. People don't talk about it enough, and that's what Joe Biden undid that Trump did, that I had a big, huge problem with. Like, it was a literal one of his best moves ever. And like the entire Democrat
he could have undid his tariff policies, but no,
he went the other way with that. Yeah. He's like, I'll show you how to tariff foreign countries. And both of their tariffs have workarounds and are absurd and cost people money. And tariffs beat up on poor people. And being that I'm a liberal and I love poor people, like beating up on poor people is stupid, and devaluing the currency is stupid. So they both do that, and they're going to continue to do that.
Yep, absolutely. And John bringing up the classic South Park turd and douche sandwich, or douche and turd sandwich episode, that's fun. I don't know. Have you seen that episode of South Park? Just making fun of two-party politics. I'm
sure that I saw it, but it's not. I would be unable to converse on it. Like, I've watched so much South Park, but it's just not landing in my brain right now. Sorry, John.
No,
but
typical thing. Like, they're like, they're the people giving like very earnest, like passionate disagreements about why they should vote for one or the other, and like a handful of people just recognizing like, wait, this whole thing's absurd. Like, what are we doing? So
Yes, Patty, I am a liberal. But basically, what I really want to point out is that I come from a liberal background. I did morph into a conservative as I got older. And then I realized that there's no real solutions there. And that the things that I want to do to help people that are economically disadvantaged would actually help them, and that less government is probably a solution. So that's where I'm not afraid to call myself a liberal. But I'm also not afraid to call myself a conservative. Like I think it's a fair, like it's a good question, and I was kind of joking, but I do want people to know that I'm not liberal. That I do have emotional compassion for everyone, but especially, you know, that the government is literally screwing over poor people. They're destroying their future. They're devaluing the grants that we give them, that there's a welfare cliff that exists, that zoning punishes poor people, that tariffs punish poor people, that these are things that we could fix very simply, very compassionately, and honestly relatively easy on the local level. Like those things are hugely important to me, and we just, we keep trying. We'll get there, maybe, you know.
yeah, we got to keep doing it, because like there's a consequentialist argument for these things. It's not just like, ideological. It's like, hey, like we want to help people, and this is going to be policy that's going to help more people. Progressives can get behind that, liberals can get behind that, conservatives can get behind that. So how do we get the best solution to do that? And that's where we come from.
Yeah.
And I'll read this comment by Gene. It says, while I was collecting signatures for libertarian candidates, I told someone who had said they would already be voting for Biden that our candidate's 38 years old and she wanted to know more about Chase Albert. Like honestly, like, yeah, that's what I think like would have been the biggest thing. Like if he were on stage, it'd be like, hey, here's like a person who's like young, who has a lot of future ahead of them. Maybe we should give this person a second look. Now maybe he's too young, but like, and I don't think so, but like, who knows? But he would have looked quite different compared to Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And I think that's honestly probably why like Pete Buttigieg is polling well too. It's because
Sure.
they kind of recognize him as like a guy with a younger family. It's
And coherent.
and he can string sentences together. He can still pull together a quip. Like that's
absolutely.
People remember that from his campaign. Again, the policy positions aside.
Correct. And yes, I get the hippies. Like my mom was kind of a hippie when I was a kid. We had a big family and friends that were all loosely associated with what we would call the hippie movement. And we certainly there's some life experience that I share with those 60 and 70 counterculture revolutionaries that we know as the hippies. Absolutely. Even though I, have short hair and always have had short hair.
All right. Well, on that note, we should probably head back, and we're going to talk about some Supreme Court cases. It just the absolute meltdown that some folks are having over a few of these. So I think we're definitely going to get to the Chevron deference case.
We've got to talk about that one. That one's honestly more consequential, and I think very, very, very well. I think it's really good news in a way. So,
yeah, so we'll talk about that, and maybe kind of the somewhat related SEC case, and then if we have time, we'll get to the Trump immunity case.
Yeah.
So I think that's gonna be the order. So we'll head back in about 10 seconds or so, and go from there. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin, and we are going to be talking about, honestly, one of the most consequential rulings to come out of the Supreme Court in a really long time. A lot of times their rulings are relate directly to pop culture arguments, little bits of judicial like overreach, a little bit of but the Chevron deference case is amazing, epic, and incredibly important to what we think our government is supposed to do for us. Like,
Yeah. And so you're talking specifically about the Loper Bright Enterprises versus Ramato Secretary of Commerce case, which
I
overturned
yeah.
the Chevron deference case, which is Chevron USA versus Natural Resource Defense Council back in the 80s. And so, Tim, talk about what it does. Like, what? First of all, like, let's talk about like what are you talking about when you say like Chevron deference?
So for my entry salvo here, I want to point at a great libertarian who wrote up what I feel is a succinct uh, uh, condensation of what happened here for Chevron deference. And of course, I'm referring to Spike Cohen, right? A family fishing company, Loper Bright Enterprises, was being driven out of business because they couldn't afford the $700 per day that they were being charged. Now, that $700 per day was not legislated into the rules and regulations. It was a government agency that decided that to interpret a law and charge a fee, right? So the thing is, the federal law doesn't authorize the National Marine Fisheries Service to charge businesses for that. They just decided to start doing it in 2013. Why did they think they could get away with just charging people without any legal authorization? Because in 1984, in the Chevron decision, the Supreme Court decided that regulatory agencies were experts in their field. And I know in this day and age, experts, especially in government, have done so much damage to their credibility that it's amazing. So, for the past 40 years, federal agencies have been able to interpret laws to mean whatever they want, whatever the administration that they're working under encourages. I'm adding a lot of words to Spike's words, and Spike's words were very succinct and well done. So I apologize for that. And the courts just had to go with it. It was called the Chevron deference. And it put bureaucrats in charge of the country. It's how the OSHA was able to decide that everyone who worked for a large company had to get the jab or be fired. No law gave them that authority. They just made it up. It's how the ATF was able to decide a piece of plastic was a machine gun, and that was in the basically outlawing of the pistol braces. It was how the NCRS was able to decide that a small puddle was a protected wetland. And okay, I keep wanting to jump into my thoughts, but let me finish this. It's how out of control agencies have been able to create rules out of thin air, force you to comply, and the courts simply had to defer to them because they were the experts. Imagine if your local police could just arrest you for any reason and no judge or jury was allowed to determine if you actually committed a crime or not. Just off to jail you go. That's what Chevron deference was. It was not only blatantly unconstitutional, it caused immeasurable harm to everyone. Thankfully, now it's gone. We haven't begun to feel the full effects of this decision in the courts. It will be used for years to come to roll back federal agencies, and we'll all be better off for it. And that's why politicians and corporate media are freaking the F out about it.
Yeah.
I added some stuff there, but
yeah. Well, I mean, on that last part, like, I mean, some of the headlines are like, all of our federal agencies are decapitated. They won't be able to do their jobs anymore. And, you know, we're basically just shutting down the federal government. And I'm like, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Are we? All right. No, that's not really what's happening. That's
not, no, I'm sorry. Yeah. No,
not at all.
Correct.
What's happening. The federal agencies still have far too much power. It's just that what they can't do anymore, that when Congress passes a vague law, and sometimes Congress passes vague laws either out of laziness or, you know, the hope that it gets expanded into something that they want. If
virtue
they're not
signaling.
So if they're not clear, the agencies can't say, well, we have interpreted the law to mean this thing. And the courts no longer have to assume that the agency interpretation of a vague statute is correct. Now the courts have to determine if, like, what is the best and most reasonable application of that statute in this situation, right? So, like, you know, you mentioned like a puddle is a wetland case. Like, okay, is that actually what that statute meant? Is it unclear? Is the agency interpretation of that correct in the action that they're taking against an American citizen or an American company? Or like, have they like kind of gone over their skis a bit and pushed the law beyond the bounds of what it was intended to do? right? Which is a reasonable thing. And it is bizarre to me that anyone would think that this is a good idea, unless you're just there in support of enforcement for enforcement's sake. No, like this is like clearly it can and is and was abused. And why would you, again, progressives, why would you want to have agencies to have the ability to do this if you're worried that Trump is going to be a tyrant? My goodness. If you think he's going to abuse power because they're going to interpret law arbitrarily and use that to abuse American citizens or anyone in this country, why would you want agencies to have that power? No, take it away from them.
Yeah,
It's
so
the best
look,
time to take away federal power.
Yeah,
I mean, every
absolutely.
time's the best time to take away federal power, but like in this case, especially.
Yeah, let's not forget that when a new administration comes in, they have the option and the alternative to fire every head of every agency that's under their purview. Okay, so they can institute people into those regimes that align completely 100% with their worldview. It abrogates responsibility of Congress. And look, I got a personal story. I probably shared it on this show before, but I had a friend who wanted to build a mini golf course. A 60-year-old guy had saved up a decent amount of money, enough money to build a little mini golf course in his small town, which was dying. But fortunately, a yogurt plant came along and saved it. But he just wanted to build a little golf course, right? He did some bulldozing and he got up close to a creek, and they whacked him for $15,000. The guy didn't have enough money to mount an effective defense. They basically took his money, took his dreams, and now he's like a 75-year-old guy still working overtime at a local place. Like, they destroyed his dreams, man, without any compassion for him, for what he was doing, and whether he actually damaged the stream or not. He just violated what they thought he should do to protect that stream.
Yeah.
Now, I'm fine with him learning a lesson of some sorts, but I think that they should have been nicer and found a way to collaborate with him. And so, arguably, this case doesn't solve that issue, but it's a step in the right direction.
And so, well, let me kind of say two things about this case too. Like, I mean, that with like that case, like some enforcement actions can still be taken, right? Like, if there's clear violation of law, like, again, maybe there's too many laws, maybe it's not right, but like the agencies can still do that, right? Because the progressive freak out over agencies are now like completely incapacitated is just nonsense. The other thing again is they can still offer an interpretation of the law. A judge just is not obliged to accept it, right? A judge can just say, nope, that's not a reasonable interpretation, and so we're going to go back and look at this and decide like what's reasonably within the bounds of the law. And then that gets to like the other progressive critique of this, which is that like, oh, judges are going to be forced to be experts on all of this different nuanced policy stuff, and they don't have the expertise to do this. But that's nonsense, because again, the expertise of the judge is in law. The expertise of the agency is not in law. This is a matter of law. So if the judge needs more information about the specific aspects of like whether or not like a certain chemical is actually prohibited by some statute, they can bring in material experts to give them information about whether or not like that qualifies under like the legal definition of things used in statutes. And if it's actually not clear, Congress, they can do their constitutional duty and actually make things more clear. They can actually legislate instead of being like sending out vibes that the agencies then get to like run amok with.
Yeah, arguably they're going to have to work more and have time to cry tweet less. Okay, like that to me is a very exciting opportunity for the future of our country, where they're actually going to have to legislate and interpret these problems that we're talking about. That's what we hired them to do. We didn't hire them to cry tweet, virtue signal, and allow agencies to run roughshod over it. So the other thing, like arguably, in my friend's case, it would allow him the possibility of a more proactive defense, where he would be able to say, you can't take my money for what I did. I just moved some rocks near a stream. That's it. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't hurt a fish. I didn't silt the water. Nothing. You can't, you know what I mean?
Right. Like, so like they would have to, if there were like any ambiguity there, like they would have to prove their case, do more to prove their case. And the other thing I want to like just make one quick point about Congress too. Like, a bunch of people are like, oh, well, Congress, like, look, they don't pass much legislation anymore. They don't like, they're not able to get big laws passed. Like, how would they ever get stuff done? I'm like, I don't know. Okay, maybe it's either not that important, or they should do their jobs then, because again, that's what they're supposed to do. They shouldn't be delegating all their power. Like, if you care about living in a republic, we should expect Congress to actually do their job and pass specific legislation that gets to the actual points, and is as clear as possible. And that still allows for, and the agency can define what like this pollutants are in X, Y, and Z cases, right? Like,
Correct.
they can
yeah.
still do that. They can still delegate some of that power. It's just they have to be a little bit more specific. And then the other thing, like, so thinking about like your friend and other folks like that, is that the Supreme Court also in a case with the SEC, which is the Securities and Exchange Commission versus George Jarkessi, that one is interesting as well, because with that said, is basically like it reaffirmed the right to a jury trial, right? Because what could happen with some of these agencies is that like you can get like charged with an administrative crime. So again, like a crime that is a rule or regulation, functionally a law, legislation made up by agencies. And then you could go get charged with this crime, go before an administrative judge, which is a judge that is an employee of that agency, so not a neutral arbiter of the situation. And then they could fine you and or like take other like criminal action against you without you being able to seek redress through the court system, and to go to a system with a more neutral judge and a jury trial. That's a good thing that we overturned that we reaffirmed that like you can seek out jury trials in a lot of these administrative cases. And yes, that does kneecap the our federal agencies, but I'm like, yeah, and that seems like a good thing in this case, that like you are protecting the rights of American citizens not to be harassed and punished and sometimes like jailed by bureaucrats who might not be neutral in these things. This is a protection of a fundamental right, one that was important enough to be defined specifically in the Constitution.
Thank you. Like that was really well said. And again, I want to emphasize, I want to go back to this emphasis that we have legislators that are not doing their job other than arguing over exactly how much to spend money on what. And even there, they are handicapped by getting budget proposals handed to them from executive agents. Like, they're not doing their job. The Chevron deference case being overturned is going to force some accountability, period.
Yeah.
So
And that's all it is. Again, it's the federal agencies can still enforce the law. It's just that they're going to have to try a little bit harder to do so. They can't just assume that whatever arbitrary interpretation, which doesn't even have to be consistent, whatever arbitrary interpretation of the law that they offer is going to be accepted by judges. So, okay, you want to make your best case, make your best case, right? Like,
correct. And again, as you so eloquently stated, Kevin, it is going to re-emphasize the rights of the individual, and it doesn't necessarily disempower the government. It's just going to make them slightly more polite, slightly less punitive. And look, I think you and I both agree. Like, if the government is as an educational agency, as a collaborative entity, we would like to see that much better than what we're seeing now, a punitive, overpowering agency that stands in the way of little people doing things that are good for their communities. So I don't know. It's a win-win, man. Win-win-win-win.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think so. All right.
Yeah.
On that note, though, we have to head to break. We didn't get to talk about the Trump immunity case. Maybe we'll talk about it during break.
Sure.
Thanks again for joining us here on WYSL. We're heading to break now. Talk to you in a few minutes. All right. On Facebook, we need to demand transparency and accountability from our government. A very reasonable thing to ask for.
Absolutely. And look, I want to kind of say that I think that this particular court is leaning anti-authoritarian. And I know that the people on the left are making the argument that Roe versus Wade was a step reinstituting authoritarianism. I don't necessarily buy that. I know it's a difficult subject for people, and I know that bodily autonomy is important. So I'm going to listen to all sides on that. I'm probably going to agree with everybody on some level, because that's how stupid my brain works. I'm just like, oh, you got a good point there. Well, you got a good point there. But we need to push back on the power and control of the government. And I love everything that appears to do that. So on that note, Donald Trump's immunity is one that I am not sure pushes back on the authority of the executive branch.
No, no, that one doesn't. So it's like, to me, as I've been, I read the decision, which is a lot, and I have been reading like threads interpreting it, and different articles about it, and it's both not as big of a deal as people think, while also building on stuff that was a big deal and continues to be a big deal. Like, it's been bad for a while in terms of presidential power and immunity, and it does add a couple new like wrinkles that are concerning, right? So it's my been you want to say, and here's what I mean by that. It's like, okay, and presidents already effectively had like a version of qualified immunity, right?
Absolutely, and it was huge. Like they get
Like-
away with all sorts of military actions that
Like
fall under
literal
the
murder.
heading of
Like-
literal murder. Thank you. I wasn't going to
Yeah.
go that far.
No,
I
no, but
appreciate you
no, it
taking
is like,
there.
I mean, like we
Yeah.
think of cases like the son of Anwar al-Awlaki. Oh,
Mhm.
goodness.
You
He was
butchered
killed in a
that
drone
name,
strike.
but
Yeah,
I'd,
no,
I'd butcher it
totally-
worse.
Yeah, so yeah, y'all know what I mean.
Yeah.
But President Obama killed him in a drone strike. It was an American citizen, a child, killed him in a drone strike. And the Obama administration made their argument that effectively, like, this was an official act of the president. And in this case, it was taken in the course of like a military action, and therefore, like, the president had full immunity from that sort of action. So it's like building on what the case that Donald Trump's legal team was making was building on stuff like that, right? Like where the president like can't be prosecuted for any crimes because any crime done in the official capacity of president is basically legal, right? It's not a crime at all. And so what this case says, as far as I can tell, is basically like something that's done as like an official act, it gets absolute immunity.
Right.
And so something like, anything that's like done in that official capacity, the Obama example that I gave, or like any other type of like lawful action that's like within the purview of the president, appointing someone to a secretary, a position that the president can appoint, carrying out like legal executive orders, things like that. And then there's what they call assumed immunity, which is basically like if you're doing something that is nominally in the like capacity of your role as president, then it's assumed that has immunity. But there are certain cases, as long as it doesn't threaten the president's ability to carry out their official actions, that you could be charged with a crime, right? So that might be cases where you appoint someone, but you're doing it because you accept the bribe, type of thing. All right. So like then you get into the area of private acts. So private acts still aren't immune. So if you take something that is not the role of the president, like for instance, talking to a Secretary of State of Georgia, that isn't technically within the purview of the president to do that in relation to elections. So you can be investigated and charged with a crime in that instance, right? So if you're taking private actions to pursue your own election, or hurting someone that's not as part of your official duty, like you just punch someone in the face, you can get prosecuted for that stuff. Like the murky stuff is more like, okay, you as president are responsible for the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice can then be used to pursue like legal remedies for, say, election interference, right? Like, okay, so that falls, that's where it sort of gets like murky. Like, okay, that could be abused a lot, but also that's kind of the status quo, right? Like they can already do that. This isn't really a new thing. And so like the new thing in this is more like, okay, in that presumed immunity situation, you can't presume the motivations of something done for an official act is something that was in pursuit of a crime. And that's what people are kind of like understandably upset about.
Sure.
It's basically like, okay, like you can't get that conversation, those motivations, all that stuff that was part of an official act that you believe, maybe reasonably so, was used in pursuit of like a private act that was a crime.
Right.
So, Yeah, that's my understanding of what's going on here. Which it's not a great thing, right? Like if you're doing something as an official act of the president, but you're doing it to like get revenge on someone or hurt someone or steal from someone or fill your own pockets, and you can't use evidence of like how you arrived at that decision to pursue that crime. Like, yeah, it's not great. It just like it notches up the corruption. It is not like a watershed event that the left is making it out to be. Like this is building on a lot of criming that's happened previously.
Yeah, I like that. So in her dissent, Sonia Sotomayor said the court effectively creates a law-free zone around the president, upsetting the status quo that has existed since the founding. She argues that the president has been made a king above the law, and I don't see that this ruling in any way goes that far, right? Like it, I made a joke like Trump's not going to be able to like say Meal Team 6 go get me McDonald's, right? And he's also like if Joe Biden says, "Hey, SEAL Team 6, you know what you got to do? Take out Trump and his Secret Service escort." Like that's also not going to happen. And then there's still the tool of impeachment that should be used judiciously and wisely and non-politically, where if a president does do things that they deserve to be punished for, we should be effectively challenging that again with the people that we hired to do that job. Arguably the Congress, right? Like that's what we're saying.
I mean, I agree. And like that's where you go after people for like the official act stuff. Like you think that President Obama droning an American citizen is an impeachable offense? Great. Yeah, like you should definitely do that.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's not like in the purview of the Department of Justice or any particular like state, or a county DA, but yeah, you should impeach him for that type of stuff. And my take on the Sonia Sotomayor like dissent is like, yeah, she's sort of right, like about kind of making presidents kings, but like again, this isn't a new thing. Like this is like again, this is ratcheting up what has already been happening for decades now.
Yeah,
and this is just another tiny step in that direction.
Yeah, I think there was some accuracy to her words, but she traveled down an emotional wormhole that I found to be embarrassing, that I did not think she adequately conveyed the point, and that she participated in hyperbolic political rhetoric to like this doesn't further the discourse in our nation. And that to me was basically concerning about her discourse. She didn't deal with legal consequences to make everybody smarter. She dealt with emotional action to make everybody dumber, and that's something that I've been struggling with for a while here. People are so tuned in emotionally that literally they're not thinking things through. They're repeating propaganda because it excites them, and they affiliate with power. And I want it to be better. I blame government schools. I want to be very clear about that. Like
that's fair.
Propaganda machine.
Yeah, that's totally fair. But yeah, no, it's funny. Like a handful of Supreme Court case dissents are sort of like that. It feels more about like ideology or virtue signaling than about sticking to the facts of the case. And again, I don't know.
Yeah, especially in the dissents, they absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, like Thomas has some of those too. Like, don't get me wrong. Sometimes they're fun to read. It's like, all right, like. I don't know.
Yeah.
You've kind of gone a bit of far field here, man.
Yeah. Look, Justice Thomas has been against the Chevron deference since I think it originally happened when he was in his early tenure at the Supreme Court. He got to write a dissent, and then what's the word that everybody's using? Actualized his reality or breathed it into life. You know what I'm talking about.
I mean,
manifest his destiny or something like that.
Yeah, no, he's been a thing for a while. And Gorsuch was like very much against this for a while, because we brought it up specifically on this show a few times, like and going back to like the Radio Free New York day, like it's just something like libertarian nerds talk about Chevron deference. Now everyone's like talking about it. We've been talking about it for years, but Gorsuch is like, but he's been going on about it for a while. And Legacy's Act. So Trump did the correct with his choices in the Supreme Court justice. Yeah, I mean, he just kind of right on these ones. I mean, people are running on like the opposite. Edward Snowden was tweeting about like we could have had a better Supreme Court if we elected Bernie Sanders. And like, I don't know about that, man. A rare Edward Snowden L.
I probably needs more context because I find him to be relatively a thoughtful individual and his tweets generally make sense. That one does not to me, but okay.
No, yeah, that was a weird one.
Yeah.
But all right, we should get back to the rest of the show, which is we're gonna talk about Independence Day. We're gonna talk about
the British.
I'm gonna.
Oh my God. Pop the top. That's not a British beer, right? I'm only drinking American beer.
No, it's Brooklyn.
Perfect. And like Anheuser-Busch, Bud Light.
Made in Utica, actually.
Yeah. MK Ultra.
Ultra. Yeah.
American made MK Ultra.
But anyway, we should get back to that part of the show and talk about America.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
Kevin, it is July 3rd. It is the eve of Independence Day. It's the eve of the anniversary of the Declaration of Independence from the smug, smarmy, empire-building British. And by God, I am thankful to be an American on days like today.
Absolutely. No, it's we live in a country, again, we just spent a good portion of the show criticizing the government, as we often do. But my goodness, things could be worse. Things could be worse because, like, the British, like, I mean, we talk about the modern state, but at the time of the Revolution, they were abusing the colonists. And they going back to, I mean, you just saw the side of the Boston Massacre too. You saw that.
I was just there.
Violent abuse.
Yeah, they were confiscating guns, brother. They were going through the countryside, marching from Boston, which was under a state of martial law, to Lexington and Concord, and they were confiscating guns. And at that point, America introduced the world to guerrilla warfare. Period. Farmers decided to start taking pot shots at those guys in red coats, and it turned into a mess. And thus, freedom was born. Period. That's it.
Right, period. Yeah, no, it's what it is. It kicked off a thing, and it's there are all sorts of, like, you read the Declaration of Independence, there are all sorts of abuses. The abuses being like quartering soldiers in there. Like, there's a reason no one talks about the Third Amendment. There's a reason we have the Third Amendment, because that's what was happening. Like, you could just, like, the government could just, like, force their agents to, like, be in your house or in your fishing vessel, or no, wrong thing. Sorry, we're not talking about Supreme Court cases anymore.
Yeah, fair enough.
They sure challenged it on Third Amendment grounds,
right?
But anyway,
okay.
I don't know if that would work, but anyway, there's some serious abuse, and people got sick of it, and they're like, you know what? We don't need to deal with this. And especially back then, right? Like, it's a lot hard to communicate messages, chips. Like, why are we letting these guys rule us thousands of miles away and, like, telling us what to do and imposing taxes on us when we can't even, participate in the system to decide what rules and taxes are going to be imposed on us? Absolutely ridiculous.
And that's where the phrase taxation without representation came from, the birth of this country.
That's right. And listen, now, you look at, like, the UK government and what they do with their TV licenses. And I'm like, it's a ridiculous thing. Like, yeah, I'm like, you've seen this. Like, it's kind of a joke, but, like, it's a real thing that they do, is they have TV licenses, and they have their nationalized healthcare system, which they are very, very proud of. But I think we talked about a case where, like, things just go horribly wrong. The service ends up being terrible. The wait times end up being terrible. The case I talked about was, like, the prosecution of, like, a nurse involved in that stuff. But there's a system where a massive chunk of your wealth is stolen from you and given over to government bureaucrats to give you worse service. And I'm glad we haven't gone down that road yet. Now, New York State certainly thinking about it, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet.
Doctors are striking in Britain regularly for better pay over the agents in government that are like New York State, giving themselves raises on a regular basis. So that was actually, I wrote a little list of things that we should A, kind of feel sorry for the British for, but B, understand why we hate them.
Yes, go for it.
All right. So honestly, this is one where I kind of feel bad for them, but the weather in Britain is absolutely absurd. It's cloudy like 80% of the time. Like they have summer where it's too hot because it's muggy, and then they have winter where it's raining and snowing constantly. So I in a way, I feel bad for them, but like still stay home. And look, here
it's a little bit rough. You know, actually, I'm gonna make fun of them for a bit. Did you see the articles going around a couple weeks ago with like there's going to be a massive heat wave in Britain? It's going to be like 26 degrees Celsius. You look it up, you're like, oh my god, that's like 78 degrees. It's 78 degrees, guys. Calm down. And they're like showing like pictures of like people sweating near water fountains and stuff, and like looking rough. And like, man, I don't even turn on my AC for that. Like, it's comfortable.
Yeah, so their alarmist rhetoric and their support for global climate alarmism is a real problem. All right, they have horrible dentistry despite all of the free healthcare that they have. Like Americans have great teeth compared to the British.
They're actually looking at nationalizing the dentist.
Oh, that'll be good.
Not quite. Yeah, it's totally gonna fix it.
They should nationalize orthodonture, and they'll probably just nationalize dentistry. And that's two different arts and two different science paths. So look, they're gonna make a bad decision somewhere. Every time you nationalize something, it ends up being a bad decision. So there you have it.
Care ends up okay, sure, you get the care for free, but the care ends up being like worse and taking longer, and it's not great stuff. So anyway, the point is, I'm glad we live in America and we just crank up our ACs. Like that's the American value. Right? Like, and again, I'm sitting here with I have a floor AC. I don't have central air, but I have my floor AC going. I have my floor AC going for my infant. Like it's just we should be doing that. And again, we talked about like France like deciding that they couldn't have ACs for the Olympic athletes coming up in summertime in the middle of Paris. Absolutely ridiculous. No, the American teams are absolutely right. Bring those ACs, crank up those bad boys. Like that's your right. And furthermore, okay, you're worried about energy, you're worried about climate change, just build nuclear power. That's all you got to do. Like France actually got that one right, and they're still virtue signaling about it.
It's an amazing thing. And look, I am a child of Ireland. I am an Irish descendant. There is a piece of me that will always resent British imperialism for stealing our freaking potatoes and starving our children. And this was a real event. It spawned the IRA. It spawned decades of violence, and it cost Ireland heavily but hey, I'll be honest, in a way, I'm glad that I'm here. In a way, I'm glad that the Irish came here, battled it out, made lives, and integrated into the population. So thanks in a way for that, Britain, but you showed who you were. You showed your true colors, and it's a blight on your history that you'll never live it down for as long as I live, which is definitely not forever. You know what I mean? I want to be clear about that. Eventually, they are moving towards like abrogating free speech, Kevin, on such drastic levels. They're writing laws where police can go through your phone and arrest you if they find offensive means. And by God, I would be an enemy of the state in Britain. You know what I mean? I'd be there.
No, it's like an actual thing that they prosecuted some people for. Like really, like Americans like absolutely take free speech for granted. Like, because I've talked about this a couple times before. It's like there are times when the government goes too far. I mean, we even talk about the social media cases on the Supreme Court. There are times when the government goes too far. But like, my goodness, like you start to look at some of these other countries and how they treat free speech. But like UK in particular, like you could actually be like arrested for like making offensive memes. Like,
Do you
totally
remember the
ridiculous.
show I did with you? We did a like when we were doing our Fridays and with Thursdays with our fun days where we were talking about fake news and stuff like that. And I
Yeah.
presented to you, some issue of guess which country has arrested 1,800 people for speech violations, not even hate crimes, just speech violations. And I was like, it was Russia. And you were like, oh, yeah, it was probably Russia. And I'm like, nope, psych. It was Britain. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was like Great Britain is all over arresting people for saying wrong things, for wrong think. It's awful.
No, so and there's that, and there's also like you can't talk about like court cases as they're going on and stuff because it like might corrupt the system. So like people can't report on court cases that might be like miscarriages of justice. Like again, I talked about the case with like the NICU nurse. And it's
Yep.
like, I don't know, it seems a bit odd. It is weird because you get all these like British people in the comments who are like, I can't read that article. Like literally, like the New Yorker article was blocked. Like you could not read it in the UK. Like you can't like get that opinion even written by someone overseas because it might like interfere with like the integrity of the court system. You can't literally you cannot criticize the justice system over there. Like it is a crime to do so. And they also have very strict libel laws over there, so it's very, very easy to sue someone for saying something mean about you.
Yeah.
Like it's just like not a thing. Like I mean, like, and again, is it great when people like say bad things, especially untrue things about people in the United States? No, that's not great. But like the bar is pretty high to like actually sue someone and get damages for that, which is part of free speech too. Like you should be able to criticize like individuals when they're like terrible people. Like, or for whatever reason, they just have stuff you disagree with. You should be able to criticize them. Like, again, a lot of us take for granted that like we have far more ability to say whatever we want here in this country, to make the arguments that we want, and it makes us a better, stronger, and richer country for it. And go ahead.
Yeah, no, it helps us learn stuff about each other every day, even when we say absurd things about people that we perceive to be bad. If they present an effective defense to that criticism, I'm very able to see them in a different light. And so I think that freedom of speech is important. I do think that there is occasionally consequences when harm comes. Like you can yell fire in a movie theater. You can literally do it. But if people get hurt because you did it and there wasn't a fire, we will still impose consequences on you. It's still a better system than what Britain has. Kevin, and look, the number one dish in Britain is literally fish and chips. It's like breaded, nasty looking white fish with like horrendous looking French fries and like not only that, but they don't even have real bacon. Like you have to ask for bacon and you have to ask for American bacon, and everyone unequivocally says it's horrible. They have some mock-up of Canadian bacon that's not even as good as Canadian bacon. It's embarrassing. You guys suck at food, and like I'm so glad we fought you in 1776 because of your food. Like my culinary experiences in the United States, I can get Mexican food at a pizza place in like Lowell, Massachusetts. Okay. Like you guys don't have that. You'll never have that. It's because you're boring. And you're boring.
They eat beans on toast. They think that's a real food. Beans on toast.
Oh my God,
goodness. The war's not going on anymore. You don't have to eat that. It's fine. Just, we'll send you some like Takis or something, like which is like it's my small rant about Takis is like I love those things because they are like I'm glad they're available in the area because they are like a Mexican chip that's imported to like New York State that was inspired by American style chips that were inspired by like Tex-Mex food that was inspired by Native American dishes. Like what a story. Like we've just like
that's amazing.
It's gone round and round, and now you get these like weird little unnatural blue spirals that are super spicy, and I love it.
Look, I got one more big criticism. British sophists, guys, sophistry is one of the banes of my existence. Literally say that the UK Parliament is not part of the government. All they do is meet and write laws that they ask the government to enforce, and they are on the government payroll. So it's like British people, I don't know what you're talking about. I got to this huge Twitter argument with like 50,000 Brits trying to explain to me how the parliament is not part of the government. I'm like, do they write and pass laws?
Well,
And they're like,
they're a monarchy.
oh, that's the other thing. They still have a freaking king or a queen. I don't even.
They have a king.
Yeah, well, because
King
she's
Charles.
gone. Yeah, like what? The rich amongst the richest people in the world are the British monarchs. It's bizarre, and
they're government subsidized celebrities. Is what they are. Sorry,
oh my God.
Like, and they want to put on airs like, oh, like they're supposed to like represent the dignity of the government and the longevity of like the idea of Britain going back through time, and like because they're there and stable, so they make these arguments towards monarchy, but like, okay, it's like sort of symbolic and expensive, and like functionally you have a parliament. You just put on airs about like it's still having a monarchy. Like, what are you doing? Why are you subsidizing these celebrities? Stop it.
Well, arguably, like everybody wants to worship their favorite leader. Britain has one installed. I think it's
and then they're just like, mean to their prime minister.
Yeah, there you go. Look,
they kind of got that going for them, at least. Like it's they treat the like functional head of government like with the respect that they deserve.
Yeah. I do have one relatively large compliment for the British Parliament. And so I don't want to completely bash them. There are good things about Britain. George Galway, one of the British MPs, retweeted me making fun of Biden. I got hundreds of likes and a couple hundred new followers. So like that guy has a sense of humor. He sees the problem with, even across the pond, he sees the problem with Joe Biden. So I was very happy with that. That was epic. And it was like a homemade meme.
All right. Well, on that note, we do need to get going. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution at WYSL. We'll be back next week. Have a good night, WYSL audience. All right. I think we went like
great close. That was perfect. Did we go long?
Yeah, we went a little bit long. It's fine. It's fine.
Just speed it up a little bit. We'll sound like
I've done that before. The Turks might like, for any of you who listen to the podcast, sometimes what I'll do when we go like a minute over is I will cut out pauses, just shave off like half seconds here and there.
Nice.
Or like if I'm really desperate, I'll speed up. But usually I can do it with the pauses, because usually there's enough like 1 second pauses that I can turn into half second pauses that I'll get through.
All right, so I got so caught up in making fun of the British and wanting to mention the fact that I got retweeted by a British MP, and it literally got him hundreds of likes and got me several extra likes on my post, which didn't quite go viral. Like I didn't break 1,000, but I think I got enough, like 500-600, and it was like a homemade meme making fun of when Uncle Joe was talking about when Joe was talking about how his uncle got eaten by cannibals in New Zealand. It was just so bad. Like one of the worst things ever. Because big libertarian victory. And I had hoped to have enough time to do it in the show. But a guy in, what state was he in? This comes from our friend Patty, who's kind of always offering us great articles that she knows would appeal to us. So I believe it's St. Albans, Vermont, on June 26, 2024, the Vermont State Police just got the finger. Now, this guy, Gregory Bombard, had gotten pulled over for speeding, if I'm reading the article correctly. And he kind of lost his mind. He flipped the cops off. He basically was cooperative, nonviolent, but like exercising his rights to criticize his captors in this case, right? They jailed him, Kevin. He gave him the middle finger. They ended up jailing him. It was wild.
Yeah.
They ended up settling, and they gave this Bombard guy $175,000. The ACL doing some good work there.
Yeah, no, not bad. I mean, Yeah, you have a right to do that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
and I'm glad that speech was protected. You should.
Yeah. Going back to its roots and actually representing important principles, even if perhaps the violator may not be the best person in the world, which
Doesn't matter.
arguably, it- there's no evidence that Bombard is any kind of bad guy. He may have just been angry about flipping them off. And I think that the facts of the case are even in question. Like he may not have even flipped them off. He just got arrested for flipping them off, which honestly
Yes.
even makes it worse, right? Like, hey, you flipped me off, we're gonna arrest you. Well, I didn't flip you off, but you're a fucking asshole.
We're not on the
And
radio anymore, at least.
yeah, whew,
Have to
that would have
beep
been
it
a
out.
beeper. Yeah, for sure. So huge victory for libertarians.
Yeah, it's a great free speech victory.
Yeah.
It's awesome. That's I don't know. I don't know, like I normally I take my 4th of July post and I wax slightly like patriotic about the United States because like
Sure.
legitimately like there's some great things about the country that there's a bunch of stuff that's flawed about our government. There's a bunch of stuff that's flawed throughout our history, but like the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the system we have now is built on a foundation that still emphasizes individual freedom and liberty. There are folks who want to like change that, but overall, we have a pretty good system, and it's incumbent upon us to continue fighting for that liberty, to continue fighting for that individual freedom, to be able to pursue our dreams, to be able to do what we want to do with our own land or our own body, as long as we're not hurting other people or taking their stuff. And the United States still is one of the best countries for being able to do that. Again, not perfect in every sense, but still one of the best countries for being able to do that. And I think even back to speeches like Frederick Douglass's, what to a slave is the 4th of July, he recognized like the value in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitutions. And one of the darkest moments in American history, right as the Civil War is in the middle of happening, and when like the country hasn't come to a decision about whether or not like slaves are even people, whether or not black people are even people. And like he saw the hope in that like the seed that like destroys the tyranny that still remained within the United States, and was able to like get to a point where like we recognize that like the humanity, the dignity, and the liberty of every person.
Yeah, I absolutely love that we went down this road because at some point in my life, I considered myself kind of a rabid patriot, but I had to kind of step back from that and take a harsher, more critical look at what I'm the government that I, through my inaction, am leaving for my children moving into the future. And no matter what, at the end of the day, for all of the mistakes that we've made, you and I get to sit on a podcast hundreds of miles apart and talk crap about our government, which is completely justifiable. But there is a certain inevitability of the 1776 moment that is hugely important to the entire world's reality. That what we are doing is based on either accidental or out of anger or out of frustration of being oppressed, the recognition that the individual, the greatest minority of them all, has rights delineated on a piece of paper, but in existence long before that, that every person is born with these rights, that every person has the right to be a human being, to be the best human being that they can be, that they have rights to defend themselves, they have the rights to offer their opinion, that they have the rights to be treated fairly, honestly, and with a process that encourages those rights to be recognized in every court in this nation, that those things are absolutely huge. So I am thankful for being a member of this country. I am, in that sense, thankful for the potato famine and the British oppressing the Irish, that my family decided to sacrifice that oppression to escape to this country and build a life for me. So, my ancestors, thank you for bringing us to America. I am glad I'm here. I'm still going to criticize the crap out of it every chance I get, but
Yeah,
I am proud to be an American, and it's absolutely important.
hell yeah. And listen, if you're not criticizing the government, you're just wasting that freedom.
Yeah,
Come on, that's what it's there for.
Exactly, man. Exactly. And look, guys, free speech isn't for people that you agree with. It's for everyone. And honestly, it's even more for the people that you disagree with, because as reprehensible as they may be, we need to hear what they're saying, because then we can effectively combat it as a community. Without it, we've got nothing. We've got the government telling us what to think, and that's garbage.
Heck yeah.
So anyway,
right.
I don't.
Yeah, I know. On that note, probably call it a night. And
Yeah, absolutely. We should probably. I mean, it was a great show, man. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed all the comments with people. Thanks for the people, especially from Twitter, to join us and make comments, because that's an important growth mechanism. They're very interested in allowing free speech to flourish under their specific money-making guidelines. But that's great. Like whatever. Right. Don't forget to smash the like button. Don't forget to hit the heart button at Twitter. Don't forget on Twitter to hit the likes, leave a comment. Or no, wait, YouTube. YouTube is good. I think they're trying to engage growth on smaller accounts. Yes, I appreciate y'all being here, man. It's awesome.
No, great. So love all the comments. Hope you all have a great weekend. And happy Treason Day.
Happy Treason Day. Yes.
All right. Have a good night, folks.